It's on to Tampa Bay. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about the Commanders' 23-19 comeback win over the Dallas Cowboys. Give that a read. Talking a lot about Marcus Mariota and his heroics, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. But first, let's get right to the playoff pairings, because we now know that the Commanders will play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Tampa Bay in the first round of the playoffs. As I tape this, I do not know when the game will be or what time or what day. By the time you hear this, you will probably know. So check ESPN.com, check my Twitter feed at John_Keim to get the playoff time and schedule. So there you go. But it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, folks. I'm going to talk about this kind of an ugly win here in Dallas, but Washington does cap their season with a 12-5 regular season mark, their most wins since 1991. Regardless of beating the Cowboys like this or not, that's a tremendous accomplishment for year one of the Adam Peters, Dan Quinn pairing. And they, after a 4-13 year, you could not ask for a whole lot better. And I don't think anybody saw this coming. And I know I did not see this coming. I think there was a point in the year where you saw how well they were playing, and then you saw the schedule and how those teams were playing. You thought they've got a chance to get to this point. But when you look at the last 4 weeks, how they've done it by, a 2-point stop against New Orleans, in a last second throw to Jamison Crowder to beat the Eagles, an overtime win against the Falcons, and then with 2 seconds left in the game, a touchdown pass, or I guess with 6 seconds left, Mariota throws a touchdown pass, Terry McLaurin from 5 yards out to complete this comeback win over the Cowboys. So there's something to be said about how they're overcome it, but there's also some concern about why they keep having to overcome it, and you cannot afford to keep falling behind in the postseason against good teams. Now, let's get for a couple minutes about Tampa Bay, their first round opponent. I'll be honest. I think of the two teams, the Rams and the Bucs, I think the Rams would have been the better matchup for Washington. We'll see how it plays out. We know that Washington obviously played at Tampa in the season opener, and the Bucs really controlled that entire game. I do think there's a sense among some players where they feel like this is the game they wanted, because they want to show like, hey, you're a much different team than how you started the year. The problem is, I think the Bucs are playing pretty well. Now they had their own struggles today too against the New Orleans Saints. So it's not like they're certainly not infallible at all. However, they do have a good running game with Bucky Irving. They do have a good passing attack with Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans. So that to me is where the problems start for them. And, can they control either area, because Washington's defense just has not been playing well enough. And now they're going to be facing one of the best offenses they've faced in a while. And with the quarterback who's really good in Baker Mayfield. So that's why, and then their run defense is very good. I don't know how much it matters, because it's not like the Commanders can run the ball right now, which to me remains an issue with the running backs. It's a big issue. But the Bucs are, in the last 5 weeks, they've only allowed 51.4 rushing yards per game. And for the season, they're I think 8th overall against the run. So this is a good defense. And then in their first game, they did a lot to confuse the line, confuse the coverage. Jaden Daniels is so much further along than he was in that game. So that's a bonus that they've already faced a Todd Bowles defense, and they faced similar style defenses throughout the year. So I don't know if that's going to be the issue, but I do wonder about controlling or containing this offense enough to keep in the game so you don't fall behind and then have to rally again. And that's when you get into trouble. When you're having to rally against the Bulls defense, then you can have some issues, because the way he can do the pressure schemes, et cetera. And that's what got him in the first game. But again, they're much further along. That was Jaden Daniels' first game. And so you would think that they'd be in a better spot to do that. But I do wonder about the matchup with this defense. And there are a couple questions going in. Number one, will Marshawn Lattimore be available? Because if he is, then you have a guy who can match up against Mike Evans, where they did not have that in the first game. So, but we don't know yet. Now, what we do know is that Lattimore, Dan Quinn was optimistic about his chances for returning for this game. He was optimistic on Friday, wasn't asked about it after the game today, that'll be something he'll definitely be asked on Monday because it clearly matters. But in talking to others, I think there was a sense that had this been a playoff game today, that perhaps he would have gone. So I think he's probably pretty close, but we don't know. And then the question is, can he stay out there all game? But at least for Washington's sake, they have a guy who knows how to match up against Evans, has had a lot of matchups against Evans, is not going to back down from a guy like Mike Evans. And so I think that's a good thing. Would that allow them then to focus more against stopping the run, because their run defense just hasn't been very good. And so we've seen that. Listen, their last five wins, they've beaten Will Levis, the Hainer Rattler combo in New Orleans, Jalen Hurts getting hurt, replaced by Kenny Pickett, Michael Penix making his second start, and then Trey Lance with his first start this season. Trey Lance has only thrown now 109 career passes, despite having been drafted a few years ago. So in other words, they haven't faced a good quarterback for an entire game in a while. Now, it's not like they couldn't have beaten the Steelers with Russell Wilson, but Baker Mayfield is better than Russell Wilson. They were close to Lamar Jackson. I don't think it was necessarily just that offense that stopped them, because they weren't moving the ball well enough consistently. So we'll see what happens there. But the point is, we don't, I don't know if this is the best matchup. However, again, I think this team at least knows them. And I think Washington has come really far since that game, but their defense just has to play better. We don't know about Tyler Biadasz's status either. He has the sprained left ankle. What I do know about that is that even on Friday, there was looked like he was walking with a slight limp. So I don't know what that means for the following week. We know he was held out. We know his importance to this team. Especially against a team that runs what Tampa does. And he's very good at identifying protections and getting guys matched up, et cetera. So, we'll see what happens there. And then, like what we know today, Trey Lance threw for 244 yards. They didn't have CeeDee Lamb. Guys were running open. That in too many key situations, that can't be the case. They had 378 total yards, 7 for 17 on third down. Like, if you want to have a longer stay in the postseason, you've got to play better than you did today on defense. And, they stiffened the red zone, but you can't rely on that against a better offense like Tampa. So, that's going to be something to watch throughout the, talk about during the week, and then watch for next weekend when they play the Bucs. But I do like where with Daniels, as long as he's doing his thing, I think they always have a chance. I think the defense has got to start creating turnovers to have, if you can't flip field position, if you can't give some, have some sudden changes on defense, then you're going to have a tougher day in winning on the road in the postseason. So they've got to do that, and they haven't done that enough. So we'll see what happens. But I don't like how they keep falling behind. I love how they keep rallying. This is a team that doesn't stop, and I think that's a tremendous quality to have. And it's, even if this is just setting the baseline or the foundation for this program moving forward, what they've shown is not just resiliency, but toughness, togetherness, all those things that matter in close situations. I think that's partly why they keep winning. And you talk to guys on the sideline or about how it's like on the sidelines, and they have problems falling behind. And one guy after another said, can't keep shooting ourselves in the foot, whether it's penalties, whether it's just, missed throw here, a missed block here, a missed play there, a missed tackle, whatever it is. They consistently have done that in the last couple of weeks. And Jamison Crowder said that we know we need to get going earlier. Of course, we all know that. And I think that's something that's going to have to improve next week for sure, because you just don't want to fall behind by a couple scores against a good team on the road in the playoffs. But again, they keep coming back. And so there's a belief that this team has. And like Jamison Crowder, Crowder said, it seemed like when they were behind, they're driving for the last score. He said, it seemed like there was never any doubt that they were going to score. And so I think that kind of stuff goes a long way. And this is what I'm going to read a quote from John Allen and what he talked about. He said, a lot of times people, they roll their eyes with the word, hearing the word culture. And, we've heard a lot about the word culture over the last 5 years, especially over the previous 4 years, where Ron Rivera was hired to change the culture, and it was brought up all the time. He said, but when he goes, the difference now is, and he's like, he didn't want to sit there and compare everything to the past. He's trying to look forward. But the reason why this team has a different, he said, he goes, you look at the way Coach Dan Quinn carries himself, it's hard not to follow that lead. And I think that's a big deal. And Quinn has been so consistent as an approach. And I think that matters. And then you see the quarterback play. I mean, today it was Marcus Mariota. In the past, it was Jaden Daniels. So that matters quite a bit in those situations. But I think those quarterbacks are ultra prepared for those end of the game situations. And then, listen, I think the defenses too, they just don't come through as much. But I think the offense clearly has been coming through, and they are very, very well prepared in those spots. And I think I go back to Cliff Kingsbury having so many walkthroughs every day. There's 2 or 3 every day. And as Austin Eckler told me a couple times, it's the most walkthroughs he's ever had as a player. But what happens is, and sometimes, you get tired of it. Colt McCoy told me like it kind of would drive nuts a little bit in Arizona when you do that. But then you get in these situations and you have a comfort level about you because you've practiced them, rep them multiple times. And that game-winning touchdown, the first rep, came on the 2-point conversion. I'll get to that in a minute. And the difference, the narrow difference in why the second time it worked and the first time maybe it didn't. Anyways, so then I go to something that Cliff Kingsbury talked to me about when he was in Arizona. He said one of the things he regrets he's had is that he didn't lay the foundation for what was expected in Arizona. And he said it felt like, you felt like maybe you had it, and then you start to win and you don't realize maybe you don't have it until adversity hits. So when adversity hit in Arizona, they couldn't overcome it. Well, he said, and what he noticed here is when this team lost 3 in a row with Quinn, he said nothing changed because the standards were set, the expectations were set, the approach was the same. So he felt like they were better able to come out of that skid than he was maybe suited for in Arizona when he was with the Cardinals. And that certainly made a difference. And since that 3-game skid, I mean, they've won 5 in a row. So I don't care how they got there. They keep winning these games, and that matters. Like you can either, it could be the cardiac commanders, but they keep doing it and they keep pulling it out. And when you do that, you do build a level of confidence. What you don't want to build going forward for the front office is a false level of security about who you are and what you have. I don't think they will. So for now, enjoy the ride and know that this team is never out of a game. And I do think, one of the things Quinn said after the game, he said, because you go back to that 3-game skid. And I did ask, like, was there anything tangible that you learned about the team that you're now, or that you've seen in this team in the last 5 weeks that maybe stems from that 3-game losing streak? And he said, yes. He said he felt like they were riding the wave too much during that time, the highs and the lows. And when they were rolling, man, we saw it, Cleveland, Arizona, Carolina, boom, boom, boom. That Browns game, it was like kind of started slow. And then they just started one haymaker after another. And that made the difference. He said, now it's not that they're playing with less emotion in those games, but they're riding the wave better. And so they're kind of staying on top of that wave, not just up and down, but just kind of riding that crest and being a lot more even in those situations and staying in the game. And let's face it, like it's a little bit easier to do that when you're against some of these teams versus Pittsburgh or Philadelphia. But the bottom line is he sees it, they're doing it, they've done it on the road. And so you look around today, there were some crazy games in the NFL again. So when you do it, you always kind of tip your cap to them, but he does feel like they're better suited for that because I do it. And these guys always talk about the brotherhood. And I think that helps as well. This is a very tight team. How it helps, the tangible effect of that, I don't know, but it certainly does matter. And it's a good quality to have. But one thing they have to do is get that run game going. And I don't know if they're going to be able to get that going this year because they've just really hit a slump with that. And again, they're facing a really good run defense within Tampa Bay. In the last 3 weeks, Brian Robinson has rushed 28 times for 94 yards. That's a hard way to go. Now, if you get 3 yards of carry next week against Tampa for him, 3.5 yards, you can stay ahead of the chains. That would help. But you can't keep having the 1 yard run, the 1 yard run, the 1 yard run, and then 5, right? This is a problem here too. This stat is the one that troubles me. Yards before contact for Robinson in the last 4 games, 3 times he's had 1.4 yards before contact or less. In the first 10 games, he only had 3 such games. So in other words, the holes aren't opening up like they used to. So it's not just what Brian Robinson is or isn't doing, it's what is not opening up for him as well. Now, whether is he seeing it right, or is it just like you see sometimes, like I went back and looked at his first few runs today, and there's there wasn't anything there. Guys are getting moved back. Like you hear about reestablishing the line of scrimmage. Well, Dallas's defense was doing that. They were knocking them back. And that's going to be, that's something that has to change. And I don't, again, can that change this year? Well, going forward, you need to have a more consistent run game with the backs, because if you do that, then I think you just unlock something more in Jaden Daniels and this offense. So that's something that we have to watch moving forward as well. As for Daniels, now we all know that he came out of the game after halftime, and Dan Quinn told us that he had mild soreness in his leg. And he said that, when you're watching this game and the way Dallas is rushing, I go back to the offensive line, and there are definitely some issues, but the way that Dallas was rushing the passer and getting upfield, they needed to have a quarterback who could have more available with his legs. So just better able to run. And that's why they went to Mariota, and it worked. And Quinn said he was accurate about his assessment. So this was not a planned thing going in. And Mariota said, I asked him, did you know you're going to go in? He goes, yes. But he was told, he said later he was told at halftime that he was going to go in the game. So, and Daniel said that, he said, yes, he had mild soreness, and it did kind of impact his ability to get out of the pocket. But he also said, had it been a playoff game or a must-win game, he said 100% he would have stayed in. His quote was, they'd have had to drag me off the field, which I believe. Like, that's just the kind of kid he is. And, he's had tough first halves before against Dallas as well. And then he covers in the second half. So it wasn't, the mild soreness, yeah, I can see it. And especially against that pass rush. And then, hey, not only do you have that, but you want to keep game, because that's going to be bigger than if you don't have him for that game, then if you don't have him for that game, then it would, what's feel like Daniels really had his rhythm today at all. And it was a struggle for him throughout the game. There were a couple of times where I wasn't game. There were a couple of times where I wasn't Dallas was doing. I have to go back and watch the tape again. There were a couple of times there was a middle of the second at a 1st and 10. Looks like he's got Diami and maybe I think it was Ertz or Eckler underneath against zone coverage. Could have gotten rid of it to that. Looks like from the TV copy when I'm watching the replay, could you have gotten to there? He doesn't quite get to them in time. Has to run to the right, ends up throwing deep to Zacchaeus, and just good ball to a guy who's about 5'9" in coverage. I mean, it was a perfect throw, because the only guy who did it was a 5'9" Zacchaeus. But if you get rid of it to Diami early on, you get him in the zone, you get 6-7 yards, boom, now you're starting to roll. And they weren't doing that. A couple times wide to Terry McLaurin, on a slant wide to McLaurin. So just the rhythm in the offense wasn't there for him, and there was no run game to help. And so it just was a tough D. I think the pressure was there in that first game. I talked about this on Saturday, my 5 things. The pressure that he faced against Dallas, he was 1 for 9 under pressure the first game. Not sure what his numbers were today, but he was under pressure a decent amount. You saw the tackles getting pitched. You saw sometimes Parsons going up through the middle against Michael Dieter. And it just, and obviously Micah Parsons is pretty damn good. But it was, bottom line is, the pocket was pinching, and it prevented some of his ability to get outside there a little bit. And they just weren't getting it done from the pocket like they had been at times. But really, even for Mariota, a lot of it was getting the ability to move and create a little bit. And that's what they needed. And that's what he gave them. So tough day for Daniels, but one thing I know about him, I think he'll be fine. So, but I do think whatever the soreness was in his leg, if there was something there that was even limiting him a little bit, you needed somebody who could get through there and create, because I'm telling you, man, like, the pressure was there, and the line they're going to have to do some work on that in the offseason as well, but still got another game at least. And so we'll go from there. Now, anyways, for Mariota, really nice to see what he did. Like, Mariota is a really classy guy, and he's been so invaluable to Jaden Daniels. And I've talked about this a lot. Dan Quinn has talked about this a lot. I heard this in the summer and even the spring, how much Daniels liked having Mariota there. I mean, they set this up very well for Daniels, or for any rookie quarterback, whomever they would have taken. But for Daniels in particular, I mean, he gets along with Mariota very well. In fact, when after he came out of the game and Mariota leads the first touchdown drive, leads any of the touchdown drives, one of the first guys out there to greet him is Jaden Daniels. I mean, very hyped for him. So that speaks volumes about both men, because The reason why he's like that is because of what Mariota has meant to him and how much he has meant to him, and how, Daniel said he didn't have to take him under his wing, but he has. And like, as Dan Quinn said, like you go out there on a Friday after practice, Mariota's out there going through situational stuff, walking through plays, walking through 2-minute situations. He's done that all year. It's why he has stayed prepared. And it's why, you remember when he signed him, like there are a lot of people who weren't crazy about the signing, myself included. I wasn't sure, and so, but when you watch him and when you're around him, like that was a really good signing. It's why they probably do it. And I don't. And why most of us don't. But I do think like the signing, and this is what I always fell back on though, is Brian Johnson knows him. He was with him in Philly. So that endorsement had to matter, of course. And then when you're around Mariota, like he is one, and Terry McLaurin said he's one of the more humble guys that he's ever been around. And I would agree, like he is a really, really good guy to talk to, just a nice guy. And a good teammate. So when you see a guy like that do that, I think it really energizes everybody else. I think I'll bet you that a lot of guys were as happy for him as they were about winning the game, just because of what he's meant to them, to the quarterback room, etc. But then you saw, like what you saw too, was not just a guy out there doing stuff. He was making plays. And one of his first touchdown drives, or actually the second touchdown drive, he had one where it's like, you're kind of scanning the field, you see it, boom, you rip it now, 21 yards. He looked comfortable, he looked confident. And then, another time he looks left, he looks right, looks back left, boom to McLaurin. Just really good processing and comfort for him. And again, looked fresh. I mean, that's for sure. And, the last time against Dallas, they did better in the fourth quarter too. So, and this is a team that has done better in the second half of games. I think which is, again, it's a very good quality because you're never out of it. And that's why I say, I think today there were a lot of guys as much about celebrating Mariota as they were the win. Now the win, of course, got the 6th seed, but he's just such a good teammate. I think it really mattered to them. Then you look at the 33-yard run, like that was a hell of a play. 4th down and 1. Yeah, Dallas thought they stopped. I think it was Robinson, and you even had, I think it was one of the safeties. You see him in the picture. He's like raising his fist up because he's running up to the line, thinking the play is stopped, and they stopped him on 4th down and 1. Boom, Mariota's running by him. Gets down to the 16. Next play, 11 yards to Ertz. Next play, then he spikes it. Then it sets up the game-winning touchdown pass to McLaurin, who with that 13th touchdown catch, sets a franchise record. Good for McLaurin. Anyways, so on that play, on the touchdown one, part of what McLaurin said is they missed that same play on the 2-point conversion. And he said it was really like, it was the first time those two had repped it together. So they talked about like giving McLaurin just a little bit more time to get in position to get that ball, because the first time he threw it, it was just high and wide. And you could see like McLaurin really didn't have a shot at it. So I went back and timed it. The first one, Mariota threw the ball in about 1.7 seconds. The second time, it was 2.0 seconds. Now, 0.3 of a second make a difference. Well, that little pause, there's slight pause that you see was enough to get the ball in the right spot for McLaurin. Boom, touchdown. So that's two veterans really that's the beauty of communication, and not only having communication, but then a quarterback who's a savvy and experienced, who has the ability to be just a titch more patient on the throw. That's the beauty of those two. Again, communication. That's how that matters. It's not just in game doing this. It's on the sidelines talking about it, so that when that situation comes up again, now you have it. So that 2-point conversion may have failed, but it also led to the game-winning touchdown. All right, so then we also he had Austin Eckler back. Didn't do a whole lot today, but one thing Quinn said, it was much good to get him back to kind of to knock some of the rust off after missing 4 games with a concussion, and rather than just activate him next week without a game, they wanted to get a game under his belt and then go forward. And so I think it made a difference for John Allen. I talked to him after the game. He said he definitely felt more like himself today. And that's why his plan all along was to get 2 games in, to knock that rust off. And the first game, get yourself feeling back in the second game and get ready to roll for the playoffs. So Mike Sainristil felt he had some really nice breakups today. It's hard for me to I'll be honest today, folks, it was hard to watch a lot of the game because there's so much stuff going on. And then for a lot of us, flights got delayed or canceled. So my butt is here till Monday night at least So because the snow back in DC, I'm hoping, shout out to my family, please shovel the driveway before I get home so I can get in. Anyways, but San Francisco looked like did a good job. We'll know more after watching the All-22. Benjamin St. Juste with 2 more penalties. Now, I know I tweeted something out about that, and I saw a lot of responses that they didn't feel it was a good penalty. I'll be honest, watching the TV copy, I tend to agree with you, but I don't know where that right hand was and what it was doing. That's the one thing that was kind of blocked from the camera on the replay I saw, and the official's right there. But we do know that he has a tendency to do that. But it looked like that was certainly more questionable than some of the others he's had for sure. So anyway, those are just some of the notes. We'll get more into this playoff stuff. I will be talking to Jay Gruden on Monday morning. I'll have that out Tuesday. There will be no game review for this. I just did it. That's about all you're going to care about with that one. And then Bram Weinstein and I, the plan is right now, Tuesday night, I hope I'm back in DC, folks, because I don't know. We're going to get more snow on Monday night. Anyways, and then I'll have something Thursday, talk about the Bucs Thursday or Friday, have my 5 things I think on Saturday, and let's get ready to roll, baby. So, but again, some of that depends on the playoff schedule when they actually play their first game, and then I'll adjust my stuff accordingly. But suffice to say, a lot of stuff coming throughout the week. So keep tuning in. And listen, folks, enjoy this season. You don't get it like this very often. We talked about this before, that I think that this is I don't know you're going to have as fun a year as this one. You may have better years. You may have better teams, but the way they are this year, from where they started, 4 wins last year, overhaul the roster, rookie quarterback, all this change, and they go from 4 to 12, and they do it in an exciting, dramatic way that, as McLaurin said, they have a flair for the dramatics, and he's absolutely right. But that flair keeps winning, so they get another game. And I'll tell you what, I don't think anybody really wants to face Jaden Daniels in the playoffs. But now the Bucs have them. We'll see what happens. We'll talk about that throughout the week. Appreciate you tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time.